She had overcome addiction, found a new life and a new love.
She was doing a lot of things that she never got the chance to do.
She loves him a great deal.
She really saw a bright future.
But now the darkness has swallowed her again.
She just disappeared in the middle of the night.
Her phone just kept going to voicemail.
Had she fallen back into the life she'd fought to escape?
Plenty of people make this attempt and have relapses.
It was so hard for her.
Them deep, dark places is hard to climb out.
Or was it a monster no one expected?
You owe some people an explanation.
I just couldn't believe it.
Because I really thought that I knew him.
November 13th, 2008. It's Thursday morning in Rock Island, Illinois, one of the Quad Cities that bracket the banks of the Mississippi as it flows between Illinois and Iowa.
The Quad Cities are Rock Island and Moline on the Illinois side, and Davenport and Bettendorf across the river in Iowa.
It just seems like one big city. Population-wise, we're probably at about 300,000.
Yet it still retains that small-town Midwest feel.
It's a good place to live, good place to raise a family.
And the Quad Cities, to me, is just real quiet.
But the mist has barely burned off the river that quiet morning when Diamond Young gets an unexpected call at 7:15.
I answered the phone,
Hello?
and it was my niece's voice.
Diamond? Grandma's not here.
What do you mean she's in there?
I woke up and she was gone.
The little girl lives with Diamond's mother, 50-year-old Robin Young.
Is Papa there?
Papa is what the little girl calls her grandmother's boyfriend, 59-year-old Chuck Harris.
She was calling me from Chuck's number.
Robin's granddaughter said that Charles had come early to pick her up and take her to school.
He would do that occasionally. He had a very good relationship with the granddaughter.
With Chuck there, Robin's daughter breathes a sigh of relief.
I'm like, maybe she got called into work, and she called Chuck and had Chuck come over.
Robin was a certified nursing assistant, so she sometimes got called in on short notice.
I'll call Grandma at work and see what's going on. Papa can take you to school.
But even after Diamond reassures her niece that everything is okay, there's a nagging worry at the back of her mind.
Robin had some difficulties earlier in life that she was working through.
She had a rough past, right, with drugs.
I had saw her relapse quite a few times.
Mama, where are you?
The biggest fear when a loved one relapses is that it could be the last time.
Call me when you get this.
Chicago native Robin Young was known for her loving, outgoing personality.
She was a lot of fun to be around. My mom was real spunky. I used to call her a firecracker.
And she shared an especially close bond with her two children.
I was the second child. I have an older brother.
They had a great relationship. She was a good mom.
The bond between Robin and her children's father wasn't as lasting, though.
They separated when I was 16. Me and my brother watched them try to make it work, but after a while, it just became too much for everybody.
In the aftermath, Robin's life imploded. To deal with the pain, she turned to drugs.
She definitely tried to hide it and tried to keep it together as much as she could, but we knew something was going on.
Things got even worse when Robin met a man named Omar Weeks.
There was already some drug history before them, but they just weren't good for each other.
Omar got Robin hooked on crack cocaine.
To watch her go from being such a strong person who could hold it down to, that was hard to watch.
Robin did try to kick the habit.
She went to treatment multiple times. She did.
Usually, she'd go into rehab whenever Omar was in jail.
She would get herself together. And then when he would get out, she would like relapse.
Just light it. When people are in dark places, sometimes it's kind of hard to get out.
But in 2005, when Omar went to jail for more than 3 years, Robin tried to make a clean break.
I was living in Rock Island, so she came, stayed with me for about 3-4 weeks, and she got her an apartment.
Quiet life in the Quad Cities was the change she needed.
She was doing good. She was in a good place.
She came here and got her life together.
Robin took classes to become a certified nursing assistant.
I remember her being nervous because it had been so long since she had been to school.
She got her certification and a job at a local nursing home.
She took a lot of pride in her job. She took very good care of the patients.
She just generally is a nurturer.
That same nurturing spirit showed in Robin's loving relationship with her granddaughter.
I think it speaks volumes that she took her granddaughter in and allowed the granddaughter to live with her.
I believe that my mom felt like she could right some wrongs with me, with my niece.
She was making the most out of her second chance.
Robin also opened herself up to love again with a man named Chuck Harris.
He was a really nice guy, nice-looking guy, clean-cut, very friendly.
Like Robin, Chuck was a Chicago native who'd come to the Quad Cities looking to start over.
He had a long history of drug abuse.
They met in Narcotics Anonymous.
They had some of the same struggles.
And like Robin, he'd turned his life around.
Charles worked at a treatment and rehabilitation facility in Davenport.
He was down to earth. He was quiet. He seemed like he was a humble guy.
They were good with each other. They were real cute together.
Chuck also helped Robin take care of her granddaughter.
She called Charles her papa. It was always them three together.
It seemed like everything was going great.
Big rainbow flower.
He was happy and she looked very happy.
So when her niece calls early on the morning of November 13th,
Grandma's not here.
Robin's daughter Diamond isn't initially alarmed.
Papa can take you to school. I'll find out where Grandma is.
Okay.
Gets off the phone with Diamond. Charles takes her to school.
Diamond figured that her mom had just gotten called into work early and slipped out before her granddaughter woke up.
When I got off the phone with her, I kind of laid back down because, again, it was early in the morning.
But Diamond quickly gets up again, now racked with worry.
What she said registered to me like my mom wasn't there all night.
Robin just would not leave that child alone overnight.
Mom!
After years of struggling with addiction, 50-year-old Robin Young had finally turned her life around.
She started over, just feet hitting the pavement. She just took off.
She was taking care of her granddaughter, her son's daughter.
I'm drawing a huge rainbow flower.
She had a good job.
And she'd found love with a new boyfriend, Charles Harris.
It seemed like they was in a good place.
But now Robin has disappeared.
Robin's granddaughter woke up and saw that her grandmother wasn't home, which was very unusual.
While Robin's boyfriend Chuck takes the 10-year-old to school, Diamond desperately tries to reach her mother.
There's no way that Robin would just take off and leave her granddaughter.
Mama, where are you? Call me when you get this.
her phone just kept going to voicemail. And so I called her job. They said she wasn't there.
Diamond was very concerned.
I done contacted everybody that I know that would even know anything about my mom.
Even more odd, when she tries to follow up with Chuck, she can't get a hold of him either.
Called him like 3 times and he never answered.
Unable to reach Chuck, Diamond goes to her mother's apartment.
Mom!
I went over and kind of looked around to see if was her purse gone or her little wallet.
The wallet is there.
It's weird.
But Diamond notices that some things are missing.
Her debit card wasn't in it.
Robin's cell phone was also nowhere to be found inside the apartment.
Is it possible Robin had run off without telling anyone?
Robin had a history of drug addiction, so a relapse wasn't out of the question.
However, Diamond can't shake the feeling that this isn't drug-related.
To just disappear, she would never do that.
Diamond couldn't help but think that her mom may be in real trouble.
After searching her mom's apartment, Diamond picks up her niece from school.
I took her back to my mom's house, and I was asking her, well, what was she doing yesterday?
The little girl says her grandmother had been at work when she got out of school on Wednesday.
Charles picked her up from school, brought her home, then left because he said he wanted to get some rest before he had to go into work that night. About 8:30, Robin comes home.
I'm sure it's missing. I'm looking at it right now. It's not here.
My niece said when she came in, she was arguing with somebody on the phone.
But not long after arriving home, according to her granddaughter, Robin had abruptly left.
You go ahead and go to bed now, sweetie. I'll be back in a little while, okay?
Okay.
What now?
She said as my mom was leaving, she got to arguing on the phone again.
But who was the person on the other end of the phone?
If Robin had relapsed and started taking drugs again, maybe she had gotten into some kind of trouble.
I just had no idea who we were dealing with.
After arranging a sitter for her niece, Diamond drops by Chuck's apartment across the river in Davenport, Iowa.
I still have not heard from him. Nobody's answering his door, so I'm knocking on the neighbor's door. And the woman that lived across from him was just like, have you heard anything?
Chuck told me Robin's missing.
Where?
This morning.
According to Chuck's neighbor, after taking Robin's granddaughter to school, he came home, but left again quickly.
Chuck told his neighbor that he was going to go looking for Robin. Then the neighbor told Diamond there had been no sign of him since.
I thought maybe something happened to them both. Like, he must have went and tried to get my mom, and something happened to them.
Diamond goes to the police and reports her mother missing.
They issued a be on the lookout for Robin, Chuck, and both of their cars and passed that information along to the local news media.
They also contact the police in Davenport.
Once Davenport police learned the situation, they headed over to Chuck's apartment to do a welfare check.
The search reveals no clues about Robin or Chuck's disappearance.
There was also no obvious indication of a struggle inside Charles's house.
There's no indication that Chuck has been back since that morning either.
With the information that both Robin and Charles were missing, we felt pretty strongly that something serious had happened.
When detectives go to search Robin's apartment, they find the first real indication that she might be involved in something dangerous.
The police found several 9mm cartridges hidden inside Robin's apartment.
We didn't find any firearms in the residence.
Maybe she'd taken the gun with her for protection.
Check this out.
But where could she have gone? Detectives believe they may be able to find out.
Look.
No ATM card.
Her debit card was missing.
We contacted her bank and subpoenaed the information for her bank account.
It's a very good tool to track the movements of an individual.
Thank you.
When detectives get the information from the bank, it shows that Robin, or whoever has her card, is on the move.
The card is being used traveling across Illinois.
There was money being withdrawn on the south side of Chicago.
Was it possible Robin had relapsed and fallen back into her old life?
She loves Chicago, you know, that's where she grew up.
It's also where Robin's old boyfriend, Omar Weeks, lived.
Maybe he had gotten out of jail and lured her back into her old life.
Or was the trail to Chicago a dead end? While waiting on more information from Robin's bank, a man calls the Davenport police with another lead.
He tells us that he was walking and he passed by the vehicle that he saw in a news story.
Our patrol officers respond. They look inside the vehicle and they see a female slumped over in the back seat.
The vehicle was opened to see if she needed medical assistance.
As soon as they opened the door, officers realized they were too late.
According to the National Institutes of Health, more than half of the 5 million American drug users who receive addiction treatment are likely to relapse or overdose later. Overdose deaths are also on the rise in the U.S. In 2020, more than 93,000 drug users died of an overdose, up 30% from the previous year. 5 days after Robin Young disappeared, detectives in Davenport, Iowa believe they found the 50-year-old nursing assistant's body.
An unnamed person watched the news earlier that night, sees the vehicle, and calls 911 to report the vehicle.
In the back seat of the car, laying face down behind the front passenger seat, was a body.
Detectives are fairly confident that the dead woman is Robin.
The body was in her vehicle, the clothing matched.
But despite the demons in her past, detectives quickly realize Robin's death was no overdose.
They see a small puddle of blood underneath her head.
She'd been struck in the head several times.
But detectives doubt that she had been killed in the car.
We observed she had a little bit of dust on her back.
Whoever put her there dragged her body for a while and then placed her in the vehicle.
Hoping to locate a witness, detectives fan out and start knocking on doors.
It's an older, established neighborhood, so people noticed that this car was sitting there.
Detectives are still talking to neighbors when Robin's daughter Diamond gets word that her mother may have been found.
My friend called me and said that she just read a story online that said they found the woman's body in the car. And so I called 911. And the woman said, "Miss Young, I'm so sorry. Nobody has come to tell you yet." And I lost it. Like everything in me just came out. I couldn't believe she was gone.
Once her daughter makes a positive identification, the medical examiner conducts an autopsy and confirms that Robin's death was a homicide.
Robin died of blunt force injuries to the head.
She had some defensive wounds on her hands and arms.
In addition, the toxicology results find no evidence that Robin was on drugs when she died.
The only thing she had in her system was caffeine.
Despite fears that she'd relapsed, Robin had remained committed to her recovery.
But now that it's clear Robin has been murdered, one question remains.
Who would want to do her like this?
There was no sign at the crime scene of Chuck Harris, Robin's boyfriend, who also disappeared shortly after she did.
Nobody knows where Chuck is.
Robin's daughter worried that Chuck may have gone looking for her mother and met the same horrible fate.
Detectives get a warrant and return to the apartment where Robin's boyfriend lives to conduct a second, more thorough search.
During that first search, they were looking strictly for the person, and that's it.
In a search warrant, you're looking for evidence of a crime, and that could be anything from the smallest item to looking for an actual murder weapon.
This time, detectives do find a small amount of blood.
We located some blood on the bathroom floor. The blood was collected and sent to the state lab.
But is the blood Robin's or Chuck's?
As much as Chuck cared about my mom, he would be trying to figure out what's going on. So I'm even thinking like maybe they got him too.
One thing is certain though. After running Robin's ex-boyfriend Omar Weeks' name through the database, detectives know he isn't her killer.
Diamond had mentioned Omar and his trouble with the law when she reported her mother and Chuck missing.
It turned out Omar was actually still in prison at the time of Robin's murder.
With Omar ruled out and still no sign of Chuck, detectives reach out to his co-workers at the rehab center.
Detectives wanted to find out if anyone at work had seen or heard from him since he and Robin disappeared.
Chuck's manager tells detectives they've been worried because he hasn't been in over the last several days.
He built a good rapport with the clients, and he had a good rapport with all the staff members there.
According to one coworker, Chuck had an especially good rapport with one staff member, a young woman named Katrina Lawrence.
We were told that they had a father-daughter relationship, that she looked up towards him and he kind of looked after her.
Although she also says she sensed that there may have been more to the relationship.
I mean, it just doesn't look right to me.
What do you mean?
She thought Chuck and Katrina were having an affair.
The way she'd be hanging on them and flirting.
Detectives investigating the murder of Robin Young have learned that her missing boyfriend, Chuck Harris, may have been seeing another woman on the side.
He was very close with the woman he worked with at the rehab center.
It just doesn't look right to me.
One of their co-workers even suspected that he and the woman had a sexual relationship.
But when detectives bring 23-year-old Katrina Lawrence in for questioning, she denies there's any sort of romantic relationship.
Seems like you were pretty close.
Who told you that? We're just friends. That's all.
So where were you last Wednesday night?
I was at work.
Katrina tells detectives she works third shift at the rehab center.
It's a place where people with drug and alcohol problems go, and they need around-the-clock employees there.
However, an alibi isn't all that Katrina offers them.
Chuck was supposed to work too, but he never showed.
He called into work and said he was sick.
And when we found out that he had called in sick that night, it immediately raised some red flags to us.
On the evening Robin disappeared, Chuck had told her granddaughter that he was going into work.
So when's the last time you heard from Chuck?
The next morning, I saw him at the school.
Her children go to the same school that Robin's granddaughter goes to. So as she's taking her children to school, she sees Charles dropping off Robin's granddaughter.
He say anything to you?
Not much. He was still sick.
He tells her that he's gonna go back home and go to bed.
But detectives wonder if he'd really been sick at all.
Arguably, something had happened that changed his plans.
Hoping to learn more, detectives pulled Chuck's phone records, which revealed that Katrina and Chuck had a long phone conversation on Thursday morning.
The phone call was right around 15 minutes.
Katrina hadn't said anything to detectives about the phone call when they interviewed her.
However, Chuck's phone records also reveal that Chuck made 2 separate phone calls to Robin on Wednesday night, one at around 8:30 and another about an hour later.
Those calls coincided with Robin's granddaughter hearing her argue with someone over the phone.
Chuck's phone records don't offer detectives any clues as to his whereabouts, however.
There hadn't been any activity on Chuck's phone since Thursday, the day after Robin disappeared.
However, the phone records do reveal that Robin and Katrina weren't the only people he'd been in contact with before going silent. He'd also called a woman named Marilyn Black.
Charles had talked to Marilyn on the 13th in the early morning.
Detectives believe that Robin's murder happened sometime late on Wednesday, the 12th.
Telephone records linked Marilyn with Charles after Robin's death. So we brought her down to the police department.
Well, what exactly is your relationship with Charles?
I guess you can say we hung out.
When we sat down with Marilyn, she was very evasive.
But when detectives press, Marilyn eventually admits that her relationship with Chuck was physical.
Marilyn knew that Charles was with Robin as well. She considered herself kind of a side girlfriend of his.
He would call her and they would get together and meet.
She says she hasn't talked to Chuck in a couple of weeks.
She denies any phone calls between the two of them on the 12th and the 13th. Detective Noonan shows her, hey, we have the phone records. We know how many times he called you.
Okay, he called me. So what?
What did you talk about?
I don't remember exactly.
You could tell that she was trying to protect Charles in some way.
The detectives keep pushing.
She lied and denied it for quite some time. And then finally, what we were able to get from her was that he came over to her residence about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning on the 13th. He gave her $20, said, this will be the last time you see me.
Did he say why?
She admitted he told her that he and Robin had been arguing, and he told her that something went very wrong.
He wouldn't tell me what it was about.
But she does say that something Chuck had told her in the past made her fear the worst.
He would tell her that when he got mad, he would turn into Chucky.
Chucky?
You know the dolls in the movies, the ones that come alive?
The one that kills people?
Yeah.
He portrays himself to the outside world as a very quiet, respectful person, but we really start realizing how violent and dangerous he really is.
But it's not until they pull Chuck's criminal records that detectives learn the staggering truth.
Charles Harris had a very violent criminal history.
His problems extended beyond drugs.
He had killed before.
Detectives in Davenport, Iowa have just discovered that Charles Harris, the boyfriend of murder victim Robin Young, has a long criminal record.
In 1986, Chicago police had charged Chuck with killing his girlfriend.
She tried to end the relationship, and Charles kept stalking her. And then one night, Charles climbed in a window, and he stabbed her to death.
Charles was convicted of voluntary manslaughter and served a little over 3 years before being released on parole.
4 years later, he was arrested again.
He had another very violent domestic assault in the Illinois part of the Quad Cities.
1994, he's married. His wife wants a divorce. She gets a protective order. He continually violates the protective order. And then one night, He comes in and he severely beats her.
She spent some time in the hospital. It was bad enough that I think if somebody hadn't got her, she probably would have died.
He's charged with attempted murder. He's convicted. He gets a 16-year sentence on that charge.
Released after 10 years, Chuck was soon in trouble again.
In 2005, he is dating another woman. That relationship goes badly. He breaks her arm.
He had a very, very violent history, particularly when it came to women. With every relationship that he had, where the girlfriend wants to break it off, and as soon as that happens, Charles reacts violently.
But while detectives believe Robin may be the latest victim of Chuck's violence, they don't have a clear picture of what unfolded until a woman named Charlene Tate comes forward.
Charlene's a mutual friend of Robin and Charles.
You said you have some information for us. What kind of information?
It's just some things that Robin had said to me. She was worried about Chuck.
Robin told Charlene that Charles was becoming very possessive, very jealous. He kept asking her questions about money, wanting to know how much money she had.
My mom was constantly getting raises at work. She was such a good worker. So at one point, she was making more money than him.
According to Charlene, Robin was also afraid Chuck had started using drugs again.
I'm not sure if he relapsed. I do remember her saying that he was displaying some behaviors that she hadn't seen from him before.
She was starting to see what Charles was and what he was about, and she realized, hey, I'm a stronger woman now. I don't need this guy.
She'd worked so hard. The last thing she needed was Chuck dragging her down.
Robin told Charlene that she was going to end the relationship.
Did she tell you what she was planning to do?
She mentioned something about a restraining order.
Any woman that talks about getting a restraining order isn't just because of verbal argument, it's because of something physical.
Charles Harris is a person whose way of solving problems is through violence, certainly when it comes to women.
It's not enough for an arrest warrant, but detectives do obtain a warrant to detain Charles Harris as a material witness.
A material witness warrant is a warrant for the apprehension of somebody who cannot be served with a subpoena. With Charles Harris, he was one of the last people to see Robin alive, so we can compel him to come in and we can ask questions.
But first, detectives will need to find him, and they have a pretty good idea where to look.
It was known Charles Harris was from Chicago, and Robin Young's bank card was being used in that area.
The days following her disappearance, the bank card was used 12 times.
I called a couple of the convenience stores that the card was being used at to pull the surveillance tape.
Oh, swear.
And the video leaves no doubt about who has Robin's debit card.
That video showed the person using her ATM cards in Chicago.
You could clearly see that it was Charles Harris.
I needed my mom. I knew I needed her, but when she passed away, that just took everything. It just really just destroyed me, and I did not know how much. And then to know that she was taken by the hands of somebody who claimed to love her, who sat in your house and just betrayed herself as somebody else. I think that's what hurt the worst.
Detectives investigating Robin Young's murder have uncovered evidence that her boyfriend, Chuck Harris, is likely the one who killed the 50-year-old nursing assistant.
He had my mom's debit card, and he was using her debit card.
Detectives had surveillance video from a Chicago convenience store that showed Chuck using the card.
He walks into the gas station, goes right to the ATM, take money out of her account.
In the week following Robin's murder, Chuck had used the card at several locations on the south side of Chicago.
So that bank card assisted us in not only proving that he was using the card through surveillance videos, but also helping us track down where he was at.
3 weeks after the murder, Chicago police track him down.
They locate him on December the 2nd, driving in the city of Chicago.
Vehicle takes off, leads him on a pursuit.
Eventually, more units arrive and manage to cut him off.
He abandons the car and leads him on a foot chase.
Charles takes off running.
That's when his luck truly ran out.
A U.S. Marshal that's leaving his residence to go to work turns and looks, sees Charles Harris running from the police.
After a quick tackle by the off-duty marshal, police take Chuck into custody.
He was in the Chicago Police Department's lockup, so we went down there.
You owe some people an explanation. Yeah. Especially one little 10-year-old girl.
Faced with the reality of what he'd done to Robin and her granddaughter, Chuck agrees to talk.
He looked completely defeated.
His explanation was that Robin had told him the relationship was over the afternoon on the 12th. She told him to get out and that he went home.
But according to Chuck, Robin had showed up at his apartment later that night.
Apparently, that's where Robin went after she sent her granddaughter to bed.
He said as soon as she came over, they started to argue.
We were arguing about money. That's all we were arguing about.
According to Chuck, the argument that night had turned violent.
What happened?
She hit me with something.
Charles claimed that Robin hit him over the head with a pipe.
What happened after she hit you?
I hit her back.
It's a very similar story to Chuck's previous attack on his ex-wife.
These two situations are almost exactly the same. There's an argument that goes too far, hits her, and blames it on the woman.
But no matter how much he spins the story, detectives consider it a confession.
They charged him with first-degree murder.
I believe he couldn't handle the fact that Robin was breaking up with him.
It's not here.
So he decided to lure Robin to his apartment.
I think what happened was when she tells him we're done, Charles takes her debit card.
It's not here.
That was his way of setting the trap.
She demands it back. He says, I'm going to give it to you, but you got to come over here and get it.
Okay, I'm coming.
She hangs up the phone and tells her granddaughter, I'll be right back.
Bye, Grandma. Bye, I love you.
But she'd never come back from Chuck's apartment.
He hit her over the head 2 or 3 times.
He then put Robin's body in the back of her car, drove away from his place, and left her there.
Why he picks that location, I don't know. How he gets back to his apartment, he could have walked.
The next morning, he'd stopped off at Robin's apartment as if nothing had happened.
It seemed that by pretending he'd just gotten off work and taken Robin's granddaughter to school like usual, Chuck was trying to set up an alibi.
Then he'd left town.
He fled to Chicago, where he can blend in and feel safe.
Now, though, he's back in Iowa and facing a murder charge.
We were ready to go to trial. It was a very good case.
But a jury will never hear it. On June 2nd, 2009, the day Chuck's trial is supposed to begin, the defense and prosecution agree to a plea deal.
The prosecuting attorney has to look at what is best for the case and what's best for the family, what's best for public safety.
You have to consider a plea as a guarantee.
Under the terms of the plea, Charles Harris is sentenced to 45 years in prison.
He'll be 84 years old by the time he's eligible for parole.
That's about as close to a life sentence that you can get.
It isn't enough for Robin's daughter.
She's never coming back. So even with them catching, he's been to prison so many times, I don't even feel like that's punishment for him.
But there is some solace that at least he will never get another chance at life, which is exactly what he took from Robin.
It's so sad that somebody who had a rough life finally got it back together, and then this happens.
She was working, doing everything right, and fell in with the wrong guy.
But even a ruthless killer can't diminish all that she overcame.
Her story always makes me just feel like even when I feel like giving up, don't, because she never did. I don't know anybody that was more proud of her than I was. My mom was a great person.
Dreams in Houston. Chapter 8: A Vanishing Star. The city of Houston, Texas, is a vast metropolis of distinct neighborhoods, varied communities, and fast-paced growth. In mid-March 2007, an unexpected event drew the attention of local law enforcement and community members alike. Tanisha Stewart, a 19-year-old college freshman attending Texas Agricultural and Mechanical University, failed to return to her campus after spending spring break in her hometown. Tanisha was widely recognized for her academic commitment and personal drive. Raised in a close-knit household alongside 5 siblings, she had experienced the loss of her father at a young age. Rather than being discouraged by adversity, she excelled academically, securing a full scholarship to study engineering at Texas Agricultural and Mechanical University. During her senior year of high school in 2005, while working at a local pizza restaurant, Tanisha met 25-year-old Tim Shepard. Despite an 8-year age difference, the two began dating. Tim made effort to integrate himself into Tanisha's family life, frequently offering assistance with household repairs and technical tasks to gain her mother's approval. When Tanisha departed for her university studies in College Station, 2 hours north of Houston, the geographical distance introduced strain into their relationship. In late 2006, Tim briefly ended the relationship to see an acquaintance, but later sought reconciliation. Tanisha accepted his apology, but friends observed that as she expanded her social circle at the university, she began seeking greater independence. Chapter 9: The Initial Inquiries. In March 2007, Tanisha returned to Houston for spring break. On Sunday, March 18th, Tanisha failed to meet her friends to attend a planned music concert in the city, when repeated telephone calls from her family went unanswered. Her sister, Gayla Taylor, recognized that her absence was abnormal. Tanisha was consistently diligent about maintaining contact with her mother and siblings. On Monday, March 19th, 2007, Tanisha's family officially filed a missing persons report with the Harris County Sheriff's Office. Detectives began by identifying individuals who had seen Tanisha prior to her disappearance. Tim Shepard was interviewed by investigators and stated that he had picked up Tanisha during the early morning hours of Thursday, March 15th. Tim told detectives that while driving to his apartment, Tanisha received a telephone call from a male university friend named Mark Marks.
Tim's acknowledged.
Feeling frustrated by the late-night communication, which led to a verbal dispute. According to Tim, Tanisha declined to discuss the matter upon arriving at his apartment and went to sleep. Tim claimed that when they awoke later Thursday morning, he attempted to reopen the conversation, prompting Tanisha to leave his apartment on foot around midday. He maintained that he had no further contact with her and was unaware of her whereabouts. Chapter 10: Exploring Other Paths. Because Tim volunteered to speak with investigators and submitted to nearly 20 hours of voluntary questioning without altering his narrative, detectives initially sought to verify all external leads. Tim also provided written consent for law enforcement to search his apartment. An initial visual inspection revealed no obvious bloodstains, physical struggles, or clear physical evidence of a violent crime. Detectives then turned their attention to Mark Marks, the college acquaintance, whose phone call had prompted the disagreement on Thursday morning. Mark was brought in for questioning on Wednesday, March 21st. Mark acknowledged that he and Tanisha had recently begun dating at college station. He stated that Tanisha had expressed an intention to officially end her relationship with Tim Shepard during her trip home. Mark provided a detailed alibi, stating that after communicating with Tanisha early Thursday morning, he had traveled to South Padre Island to attend a scheduled social gathering with
friends.
Investigators verified his travel records and location data, confirming his statements and eliminating him as a suspect. Chapter 11: Smoke and Secrets. With Mark Marks cleared, investigators re-examined the timeline surrounding Tim Shepard's apartment complex. Patrol officers canvassed the neighborhood, interviewing residents and gathering observations from the dates following Tanisha's disappearance. Multiple neighbors reported an unusual occurrence taking place from Friday, March 16th through the weekend. They described seeing Tim operating two outdoor food grills continuously on his apartment patio, generating large volumes of dense smoke that prompted neighbors to contact emergency fire services. When fire personnel had responded to the smoke complaint, Tim explained that he was preparing large quantities of meat for an upcoming community event. Firefighters noted seeing large containers of unheated meat stored in a bathtub inside the residence. Additionally, a neighbor reported observing Tim applying significant quantities of concentrated liquid bleach to his outdoor patio surface, creating fumes strong enough to irritate the eyes of onlookers. These reported behaviors occurring immediately after Tanisha was last seen raised severe concern among homicide detectives. Chapter 12: the confession, and the search. Recognizing the growing concerns surrounding the case, Tanisha's family reached out to local community activist Quan Nellex to assist in seeking answers. Simultaneously, members of Tim Shepard's family contacted Quan Nellex, maintaining that Tim was being subjected to unfair scrutiny by law enforcement. Quan Nellex arranged a private meeting with Tim at his apartment. During their conversation in a private room, Quan Nell questioned Tim directly about his involvement in Tanisha's disappearance. Under direct questioning, Tim experienced an emotional breakdown and admitted that he had killed Tanisha. He stated that during their argument on Thursday morning regarding her relationship with Mark Marks, he succumbed to jealousy and strangled her to death inside the apartment. He then claimed he had placed her body inside an outdoor commercial dumpster located within his apartment complex. Quan Nellex immediately contacted lead investigator Sidney Miller of the Harris County Sheriff's Office. Detectives, accompanied by Quan Nellex and Tim Shepard, proceeded directly to the designated dumpster location. Upon arrival, officers discovered that the dumpster had been completely emptied by municipal waste services earlier that afternoon. Local waste management officials informed investigators that the contents of that specific dumpster had already been transported and compacted within a massive regional landfill containing thousands of tons of daily refuse. Experts estimated that searching the facility would require months of excavation at extreme financial cost, with negligible probability of recovering human remains. Tanisha's family advised law enforcement not to pursue an exhaustive landfill excavation under those parameters. Chapter 13: The Forensics of Justice. Following his verbal admission to Quan Nellex, Tim Shepard retained legal counsel and exercised his legal right to remain silent, refusing further formal statements to law enforcement to proceed with formal murder charges without the physical recovery of a body. Prosecutors required physical forensic evidence linking the crime to the apartment. Crime scene investigators performed a secondary, meticulous examination of Tim's apartment and patio area, utilizing specialized forensic lights and chemical sprays. Technicians detected microscopic traces of blood that had seeped beneath the baseboards near the bathroom and patio entrance. Inside the kitchen plumbing, forensic officers recovered microscopic bone fragments and tiny fragments of tooth enamel from within the garbage disposal unit outside on the patio area adjacent to where the outdoor grills had been operated. Technicians located small pieces of charred material. Subsequent analysis conducted by the State Crime Laboratory confirmed that the recovered tooth enamel matched Tanisha Stewart's dental structure. This physical evidence corroborated the prosecution's theory regarding the destruction of evidence. A grand jury subsequently returned a formal indictment charging Tim Shepard with first-degree murder. Chapter 14: Trial and Resolution. The trial of Tim Shepard opened on September 29, 2008, in Harris County, Texas. Prosecutors presented physical evidence, including the dental enamel retrieved from the apartment drainage system, along with testimony detailing the continuous outdoor burning observed by neighbors. Quan Nelex took the witness stand, detailing the defendant's uncoerced verbal admission inside the apartment. Furthermore, the prosecution called Nicholas Shepard, the defendant's cousin, who testified that months prior to the incident, Tim had made statements indicating he would resort to violent acts and mutilation if Tanisha ever attempted to end their relationship. During the penalty phase of the proceedings, Tim Shepard chose to testify on his own behalf. He claimed that the altercation had been initiated by Tanisha with a sharp object, asserting he had acted in self-defense and panicked following her death. Under cross-examination, however, he acknowledged the method by which he had handled her remains, confirming the details of his post-crime actions. After evaluating the evidence and testimony, the jury returned a verdict of guilty. On October 1, 2008, Tim Shepard was sentenced to 99 years in state prison. Book 3, Darkness on the Interstate. Chapter 15, The Commute Disturbed. The city of Raleigh, North Carolina, serves as a central hub within the research triangle, connected by major thoroughfares carrying thousands of morning commuters. On Wednesday, January 30th, 2008, at approximately 7:30 in the morning, motorists traveling along Interstate 540 observed a figure lying in the grass beside the shoulder of the highway. Emergency dispatch received multiple calls reporting the sighting. Law enforcement officers and emergency services personnel arrived on scene shortly thereafter, discovering the body of a young female lying face down in the grass. Emergency medical technicians confirmed that the individual was deceased, exhibiting severe traumatic wounds to her neck and face caused by a sharp instrument. As crime scene investigators cordoned off the area, a motorist named Darren Curtis was navigating his routine morning commute along Interstate 540. Noticing the heavy traffic delay caused by the police presence, Darren slowed his vehicle. As he passed the crime scene, he noted the blue tarp covering the victim. Continuing approximately 1/2 mile down the interstate, Darren observed a white sedan parked on the shoulder with its hazard lights off. Recognizing the vehicle as belonging to his wife, 21-year-old Latrice Curtis, Darren pulled over, exited his car, and approached the parked vehicle. Finding it unoccupied, he returned to the scene where law enforcement officers were operating. Officers confirmed his fears. The deceased woman discovered beside the highway was his wife, Latrice. Chapter 16, Anatomy of a Crime Scene. Investigators from the Wake County Sheriff's Office commenced an intensive inspection of both location sites. The primary scene where Latrice's body was recovered exhibited no signs of robbery. Her personal jewelry remained intact, though her mobile phone and purse were missing. The autopsy revealed that Latrice had suffered over 40 sharp force trauma wounds concentrating on her head, neck, upper chest, and hands. Forensic pathologists noted deep defensive lacerations across her fingers and palms, indicating that she had fought her attacker. At the secondary scene, The white sedan parked 1/2 mile away, technicians noted evidence of a physical struggle inside the cabin. The central storage console was damaged, and blood traces were identified on the interior paneling of the driver's side door. Forensic technicians swabbed the steering wheel and interior handles for genetic material, recovering foreign biological samples for comparison. Chapter 17: Unraveling the Marriage and the Affair. Latrice Curtis was a student at North Carolina Central University in nearby Durham, pursuing a degree in business administration. 9 months prior to her death, she had married Darren Curtis, a former National Guard member. Friends and family described the couple as dedicated to their studies and home life. When questioned by detectives, Darren provided a detailed accounting of his whereabouts. He stated that Latrice had called him around 10 o'clock the previous evening to report that she was leaving campus late and planned to obtain food before heading home. Darren stated he went to sleep around 11:30 at night. When he awoke the following morning at 7 o'clock, Latrice was not home. Assuming she had stayed overnight at her parents' residence after studying, he departed for work, choosing his regular route along Interstate 540, where he encountered the investigative scene. Detectives examined Darren's clothing and arms, finding no cuts, scratches, or physical indicators of a violent struggle. A search of his vehicle and the couple's apartment yielded no forensic evidence connected to the crime. However, the autopsy report revealed a critical finding. A used condom was recovered internally during the medical examination. Pathologists noted no traumatic injuries indicating a sexual assault, suggesting consensual contact prior to her death. Subsequent analysis of Latrice's mobile phone records revealed frequent late-night text communications and voice calls with an unrecognized number. Investigators traced the number to Stephen Randolph, a star basketball player attending North Carolina Central University. Chapter 18: The House on the Corner. On February 1, 2008, 2 days after the murder, Stephen Randolph voluntarily arrived at the Wake County Sheriff's Office to speak with detectives. He was accompanied by his housemate and landlord, 43-year-old Robert Reeves, a prominent local pastor in the Durham community. During initial questioning, Stephen acknowledged knowing Latrice as a fellow university student, but initially downplayed their relationship. When detectives presented the telephone call logs and autopsy findings, Stephen altered his statement, admitting that he and Latrice had engaged in a hidden personal affair. Over the preceding months, Stephen stated that Latrice had visited his residence on the evening of January 29th, leaving around 10 o'clock at night. He claimed that shortly after her departure, she began telephoning his mobile phone repeatedly, expressing concern regarding the possibility of an unintended pregnancy resulting from their encounter. Stephen stated that after receiving those calls, he spent the remainder of the night at the apartment of his primary girlfriend, Velma Newton. Velma was interviewed separately by detectives and corroborated Stephen's account, stating He had arrived at her residence around 10 in the evening and remained until approximately 1 in the morning. Chapter 19. The Pastor's Shadow. As investigators sought to clarify the timeline, they turned their attention to Stephen's landlord, Pastor Robert Reeves. Reeves occupied the upper level of the residential home where Stephen rented a basement apartment. When interviewed, Pastor Reeves stated that he had observed Latrice's vehicle parked outside the residence on the evening of January 29th while he prepared to depart for a church service at 8:15. He claimed he returned home around 11:30 at night and observed that both Stephen and Latrice had departed. Detectives noted, however, that Pastor Reeves exhibited several visible scratches and surface abrasions on his hands and forearms. When asked to account for these marks, Reeves claimed he had sustained them while moving heavy office furniture down a stairway. Upon further questioning of Stephen Randolph regarding his housing arrangement, Stephen revealed that Pastor Reeves had recently exhibited inappropriate and intrusive behavior. Stephen reported that Reeves had made explicit personal advances and had offered financial rent reductions in exchange for personal favors, advances that Stephen stated he had firmly rejected. Furthermore, Stephen's girlfriend, Velma Newton, informed investigators that in the weeks leading up to the homicide, both she and Stephen had received repeated, menacing phone calls from a blocked caller demanding that Stephen end his social relationships. On one occasion, Stephen discovered that the tires on his parked vehicle had been deliberately punctured. Investigators subpoenaed cellular tower records for the line generating the anonymous threats. The records confirmed that the calls originated from a device registered to Pastor Robert Reeves. Chapter 20. The Highway Alibi Shattered. A major break in the investigation occurred when a North Carolina state trooper contacted homicide detectives regarding a routine highway observation from the night of the crime. The trooper reported that at approximately 1:30 in the morning on January 30th, 6 hours prior to the discovery of Latrice's body, he had observed a vehicle parked on the shoulder of Interstate 540 with its hazard lights flashing. A routine license plate query registered the vehicle to Robert Lee Adams Reeves. Across the median on the opposing shoulder, the trooper had noted a second stationary vehicle matching the description of Latrice Curtis's white sedan. This physical evidence directly contradicted Pastor Reeves' assertion that he had remained at home throughout the late-night hours. Investigators re-interviewed Reeves' sister, who had attended the same religious service Reeves claimed to have participated in. She confirmed that he had not been present at the venue that evening. Forensic analysis of biological samples recovered from the steering wheel of Latrice's sedan identified a genetic match to Robert Reeves. Additionally, forensic technicians identified trace biological material belonging to Reeves beneath Latrice's fingernails, alongside material from Stephen Randolph, resulting from their earlier contact. Chapter 21. The Scales of Justice. Investigators formulated a coherent theory of the crime. Pastor Reeves, driven by an unhealthy personal fixation on his tenant Stephen Randolph, had sought to undermine Stephen's relationships. On the night of January 29, 2008, Reeves observed Latrice leaving the residence. Armed with a sharp instrument, he followed her vehicle onto Interstate 540, signaled for her to pull off onto the shoulder, and initiated a violent confrontation inside her vehicle that culminated in her death. He then moved her vehicle further down the highway before fleeing the area. On February 2, 2008, Pastor Robert Lee Adams Reeves was arrested and formally charged with first-degree murder. The trial commenced on September 29, 2009, at the Wake County Courthouse in Raleigh. Prosecutors detailed the phone records, the state troopers' direct observation of Reeves' vehicle on the highway, and the forensic identification of his DNA inside the victim's car and on her person. The defense argued that the physical evidence was circumstantial and suggested that Stephen Randolph possessed a greater personal motive regarding the victim's potential pregnancy. However, prosecution witnesses established that the sheer volume of Reeves' genetic material at the scene, combined with his false alibi and documented threatening behavior, demonstrated direct culpability. On October 9, 2009, following 2 days of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict of guilty of first-degree murder. Robert Lee Adams Reeves was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The conclusion of these 3 cases reflects the steady dedication of law enforcement officers, forensic specialists, and community members working together to uncover the truth. Through careful gathering of evidence, logical deduction, and formal legal proceedings, justice was achieved for Wayne Irby, Tanisha Stewart, and Latrice Curtis. The winter morning in Raleigh, North Carolina, began like any other on Wednesday, January 30, 2008, at approximately 7:30. In the morning, a cold frost covered the ground, and commuters rushed along Interstate 540 to reach their offices before the rush hour peaked. Yet, as the sun climbed higher, casting a pale light over the asphalt, several drivers slammed on their brakes and stared in horror at the roadside. Lying motionless in the damp grass was a human form, obscured by the cold, damp air. When emergency dispatchers received the initial frantic calls, first responders rushed to the scene to assess the situation. They expected a routine pedestrian accident, perhaps someone stranded and struck by a passing vehicle in the dim morning light. However, upon closer inspection, the grim reality became undeniable. The young woman lying in the grass had not been hit by a car. She had been brutally stabbed multiple times about her face and throat. Major crimes. Detectives were immediately summoned to take control of the investigation. The victim was soon identified as 21-year-old Latrice Curtis, a vibrant, a college student with a bright future. Her husband, Darren Curtis, a young accounting student whom she had married less than a year prior, discovered her white vehicle abandoned just half a mile from the crime scene as he drove to work. Darren's panicked realization that the car belonged to his wife led him back to the cordoned-off area where authorities delivered the devastating news. For Latrice's family, the grief was immediate and overwhelming. Her father struggled to comprehend the senseless violence that had stolen his only daughter. Police detectives, led by seasoned investigators, began the arduous task of unraveling the couple's lives to find a motive. On the surface, Darren and Latrice appeared to be the embodiment of a textbook romance, a young couple, deeply in love, balancing their education and their newlywed status with optimism. But beneath that polished veneer lay secrets that neither family member nor friend could have anticipated. As forensic technicians processed the bloody crime scene, they recovered a condom from inside the victim's body during the autopsy. Although there were no signs of a sexual assault, this discovery pointed investigators toward a new line of inquiry. Phone records subpoenaed by the police revealed a flurry of calls made and received around midnight between Latrice and a young man named Stephen Randolph. Stephen Randolph was an attractive student and a collegiate basketball player, attending North Carolina Central University. When police brought Stephen in for questioning, he initially maintained that he and Latrice were merely friends from class. However, when confronted with the undeniable phone records and the physical evidence, Stephen altered his story. He confessed that he and Latrice had engaged in a private, passionate sexual encounter on the night of the murder. During that encounter, a condom became trapped inside her, leading to frantic phone calls late into the night as Latrice worried about the implications while returning to her husband. Stephen claimed that after Latrice left his residence around 10 o'clock that evening, he eventually drove to his girlfriend Velma Newton's apartment to clear his head. Detectives verified his timeline with Velma, whose loyalty to Stephen remained unshakable despite the scandalous revelations. Yet, Stephen's alibi left a critical window of time unaccounted for, placing him squarely in the sights of the investigators. Further complicating the narrative was Stephen's roommate, a charismatic 43-year-old pastor and motivational speaker named Robert Reeves. Pastor Reeves, affectionately known as the bishop within the local evangelical community, had taken Stephen in when the young athlete fell on hard times, charging him a nominal rent for a basement apartment. When interviewed by the police, Pastor Reeves confirmed that Latrice had visited Stephen on the night of the murder and that he had seen her car parked outside before leaving for a church service at 8:15 in the evening. However, as detectives dug deeper into the lives of the household, the layers of deception began to peel back. Pastor Reeves exhibited unusual behaviors and made statements that directly contradicted those of his sister, who also lived nearby, and stated she never saw him at the church service he claimed to have attended. Furthermore, investigators discovered that Robert Reeves harbored a dark, obsessive fixation on his young roommate. The investigation took a dramatic turn when police examined phone records and discovered that Robert Reeves had made numerous blocked calls to Stephen and to Stephen's girlfriend Velma, hurling anonymous threats in an attempt to sabotage their relationship. Reeves was deeply jealous of anyone who shared Stephen's attention, driven by a secret life as a predator who compartmentalized his respectable public persona as a man of God from his illicit desires. Crucially, forensic analysis of the DNA evidence recovered from Latrice's vehicle matched the genetic profile of Robert Reeves. The detectives reconstructed the events of that fateful night. Robert Reeves, consumed by jealousy and rage over Stephen's involvement with Latrice, followed the young woman as she drove away from his home. He intercepted her along the interstate, forced her to pull over, and unleashed a vicious, frenzied attack, driven by the delusional belief that removing Latrice would clear the path to Stephen's affections. On February 2nd, 2008, police formally charged Pastor Robert Reeves with the first-degree murder of Latrice Curtis. The shockwaves rippled through the Durham religious community, where many initially refused to believe that a respected spiritual leader could commit such a heinous act. When the trial commenced in September 2009, prosecutors presented a compelling case built upon circumstantial evidence, forensic DNA matches, the testimony of state troopers who had spotted the pastor's vehicle idling near the crime scene, and the chilling testimony of Stephen Randolph detailing the pastor's inappropriate sexual propositions and offers of free rent in exchange for favors. The defense attempted to argue that Stephen was the true culprit and that the DNA found in the car was merely the result of secondary transfer, but the sheer volume of physical evidence and the inconsistencies in the pastor's alibi proved insurmountable. On October 9, 2009, the jury returned a verdict of guilty. Robert Lee Adams Reeves was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, while the verdict brought a measure of closure to Latrice's grieving family and her husband Darren. The tragedy left an indelible scar, reminding the community that monsters can sometimes hide behind the most respectable masks, and that justice, though slow, eventually prevails against the darkest of human impulses. In a completely different corner of the country, another narrative of passion, suspicion, and tragedy unfolded in the quiet town of Gainesville, Texas. On December 11th, 2004, a hotel manager received an urgent call from a guest room. Upon breaking down the locked door, management found a woman lying on the floor in a fetal position, bleeding from a gunshot wound just above her eye. A .25 caliber handgun lay nearby. The injured woman was identified as Denise Miller, who, along with her boyfriend, Little Elm Police Officer Wayne Irby, had been reported missing 24 hours earlier. The disappearance of Officer Wayne Irby had thrown the small police department into a state of profound anxiety. Wayne was a dedicated 6-year veteran of the force, a man who bled blue and took immense pride in serving his community. When he failed to report for his 6 o'clock morning shift on December 10th, his colleagues immediately recognized that something was gravely amiss. Wayne's partner, Jerry Walker, accompanied by another officer, eventually secured a key to the rental home across town that Wayne had briefly occupied. during a temporary separation from Denise. Inside the kitchen, officers discovered Wayne's fanny pack and cell phone. Proceeding down the hallway, Officer James Wynn stopped abruptly, warning his colleagues not to approach. Wayne Irby was lying lifeless on the floor, the victim of a single gunshot wound to the back of the head. There were no signs of a struggle, indicating he had been ambushed from behind. Investigators immediately turned their attention to Denise Miller, who was nowhere to be found. Denise, a devoted mother of two who had moved to Texas for a fresh start following a divorce, had met Wayne when he knocked on her door to remind her to close her garage door. What began as a courteous encounter blossomed into a passionate romance. However, the relationship was fraught with underlying tension. Denise struggled with intense jealousy, frequently accusing Wayne of infidelity. Although Wayne was known for his charm and friendliness, he vehemently denied these accusations, leading to frequent arguments and a brief separation. When police searched the home Denise shared with her children, they uncovered a handwritten note that appeared to be a suicide note alongside an empty holster where Wayne's service weapon should have been. This discovery initially pointed investigators toward the grim conclusion that Denise had killed Wayne in a fit of jealous rage before attempting to take her own life. However, the plot thickened when Gainesville police located Denise at a local hotel. She had survived a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head, though her condition was critical. Inside her hotel room, investigators recovered Wayne's missing .40 caliber service weapon, along with a .25 caliber handgun and multiple suicide notes. One of these notes contained a startling revelation. Denise claimed that the shooting of Wayne Irby had been a tragic accident, asserting that she had panicked and fled the scene rather than seeking help. As Denise recovered from her catastrophic injuries, which left her with temporary amnesia, partial paralysis, and impaired cognitive function, Texas Ranger Tracy Murphy conducted a bedside interview. Denise insisted she had no memory of harming Wayne, expressing genuine shock upon learning of his death. Despite her claims of memory loss and the defense's argument that the shooting was accidental, ballistics testing and forensic evidence painted a starkly different picture. The trigger pull of the weapon required significant pressure, negating the possibility of an accidental discharge, and the fatal wound to the back of the head strongly indicated premeditated murder rather than a fumbling mishap. On January 18, 2005, Denise Miller was formally charged with first-degree murder. Following extensive physical rehabilitation, she was declared competent to stand trial. In July 2006, the state of Texas versus Denise Miller commenced in the Denton County Courthouse. The prosecution portrayed Denise as a possessive and volatile lover who, upon realizing Wayne was permanently ending the relationship, confronted him with a firearm and executed him in cold blood. The defense countered by emphasizing Denise's frail physical state in her wheelchair and reiterating her claim that the shooting was an unintentional accident, pointing to the scribbled line in her suicide note as her dying declaration. The jury, however, was unpersuaded by the defense's assertions of accidental homicide, weighing the physical evidence of the deliberate shot to the back of the head and the confession notes left behind. After brief deliberations, the jury returned a guilty verdict, displaying a measure of mercy given her severe disabilities resulting from her own suicide attempt. The jury spared her the death penalty, sentencing Denise Miller to 62 years in prison. The tragedy left behind grieving children and a shattered community, serving as a solemn reminder of how unchecked jealousy can obliterate reason and destroy multiple lives in a single, devastating moment. Yet another tale of youthful ambition, toxic obsession, and unimaginable brutality unfolded in the Houston, Texas area in March 2007. 19-year-old Tanisha Stewart was a bright and shining star, a young woman from a tough neighborhood who earned a scholarship to Texas A&M University, determined to build a successful future. During her late teens, Tanisha had entered into a relationship with a man 8 years her senior, 25-year-old coworker Tim Shepard. Initially, the romance blossomed, and Tim won over Tanisha's family with his helpful demeanor around the house. However, as Tanisha moved away to college and began expanding her horizons, meeting new people and asserting her independence, the relationship deteriorated. Tim became increasingly possessive, domineering, and abusive, resorting to threats and physical intimidation when Tanisha attempted to distance herself or began seeing a fellow college student named Mark Marks. On Thursday, March 15, 2007, during her spring break trip home to Houston, Tanisha vanished. After she failed to show up for a highly anticipated concert to see Beyoncé, her family panicked and filed a missing persons report. Investigators immediately zeroed in on the last people to see her alive, beginning with Mark Marks and subsequently turning their attention to Tim Shepard. When questioned by detectives, Tim maintained a calm facade, claiming that Tanisha had simply stormed out of his apartment after an argument regarding her phone calls with Mark, and that he had no knowledge of her whereabouts. A preliminary voluntary search of Tim's apartment yielded no immediate clues, leading police to temporarily treat him as a cooperating witness while they explored other possibilities, including stranger abduction. However, troubling reports from neighbors began to accumulate. Residents of the apartment complex reported seeing Tim engaged in an obsessive, continuous session of barbecuing over several days following Tanisha's disappearance, utilizing 2 separate grills to the point where fire departments had to be called due to the massive smoke. Furthermore, a neighbor witnessed Tim scrubbing his patio with industrial amounts of bleach, producing fumes so potent they burned the eyes of passers-by. Driven by desperation and convinced of Tim's guilt, Tanisha's sister Gayla sought the assistance of a prominent local community activist named Quan Nell X. In a private meeting arranged at Tim's apartment, Quan Nell confronted the young man, urging him to tell the truth. Under the weight of the interrogation and facing direct appeals to his conscience, Tim Shepard finally broke down. He confessed that during an argument over Mark Marks, he flew into a blind, jealous rage, strangled Tanisha to death, and subsequently disposed of her body in a dumpster. Horrified by the confession, Quannell X immediately notified investigator Sidney Miller. Authorities rushed to the specified dumpster, only to discover it had already been emptied into a massive municipal landfill. Realizing the impossibility of recovering remains from the vast expanse of trash, investigators turned their forensic efforts back toward Tim's apartment. A meticulous secondary search of the premises uncovered microscopic evidence that revealed the true horror of the crime. Forensic technicians discovered bone fragments within the garbage disposal, along with dental enamel positively identified as belonging to Tanisha Stewart through DNA comparison. Additionally, investigators found charred bone fragments near the barbecue grills. The physical evidence indicated that Tim Shepard had systematically dismembered Tanisha's body and incinerated her remains to eradicate all traces of his crime. On September 29, 2008, the state of Texas versus Tim Shepard began in a Houston courtroom. The prosecution presented a robust, circumstantial case, reinforced by the dental evidence, the accounts of continuous barbecuing and bleach cleaning, the testimony of Tim's cousin regarding his prior threats to dismember and boil anyone who tried to leave him, and the damning testimony of Quannell X detailing Tim's confession. The defense argued that the state lacked a physical body and attempted to introduce a dramatic shift during the sentencing phase when Tim Shepard took the stand in his own defense. Under oath, Tim concocted a wildly implausible tale of self-defense, claiming that Tanisha had attacked him with a knife during an argument and that he had acted to protect himself, blacking out during the struggle and waking up to find her lifeless. When questioned about the disposal of the body, Tim chillingly corrected the prosecutor, stating he had placed her remains in a smoker rather than a standard grill. The jury soundly rejected Tim's fabricated narrative of self-defense. Following deliberations, they delivered a guilty verdict of murder and sentenced Tim Shepard to 99 years in prison, ensuring he would spend the remainder of his natural life behind bars. The verdict provided a measure of closure for Tanisha's grieving family, honoring the memory of a brilliant young woman whose life was cut short by the dark malice of an insecure and possessive mind. Across all three cases, the underlying threads remain consistent. Whether in the quiet suburbs of North Carolina, the small towns of Texas, or the bustling outskirts of Houston, crimes born of obsession, jealousy, and possessive control invariably crumble under the relentless light of thorough police investigation, forensic science, and the unwavering dedication of those who seek justice. The perpetrators in each instance attempted to weave intricate webs of deception, construct false alibis, and conceal their actions through acts of unspeakable cruelty. Yet in every scenario, the collective vigilance of investigators, the precision of modern forensics, and the courage of witnesses ensured that truth prevailed over falsehood and accountability triumphed over wrongdoing. The educational value of examining these tragedies extends far beyond the mechanics of criminal investigation. They serve as profound reminders of the importance of emotional maturity, healthy communication, and the immediate recognition of toxic relationship dynamics. Obsession is not love, and control is never a substitute for genuine affection. When relationships face insurmountable fractures, walking away safely and respecting individual autonomy remains the only civilized and constructive path forward. Moreover, the tireless efforts of law enforcement officers, forensic analysts, and community advocates highlight the nobility inherent in the pursuit of justice. These professionals work tirelessly behind the scenes, sifting through chaos, examining microscopic fragments of evidence, and navigating complex human emotions to bring clarity to darkness. Their dedication safeguards communities and honors the dignity of victims whose voices were prematurely silenced. In reflecting upon these narratives, one is reminded of the enduring triumph of the human spirit over adversity, while the grief experienced by the families of Latrice Curtis, Wayne Irby, and Tanisha Stewart remains a permanent sorrow. The resolution of their respective cases affirms that society maintains its moral compass through the strict enforcement of law and the collective refusal to let darkness eclipse the light of truth. As communities continue to foster awareness, empathy, and vigilance, the legacy of these events reinforces the ongoing commitment to creating a safer, more compassionate world where every individual is valued, respected, and protected from the destructive impulses of those who fail to master their own passions. Human history is littered with tales of passion that veered sharply off course, mutating from warmth into obsession, from devotion into dark control. We often comfort ourselves with the notion that evil arrives with a clear warning, wearing a recognizable mask of hostility. Yet, the most tragic ruptures in the social contract occur within the quiet sanctuaries of everyday life, a stretch of quiet highway bathed in the cold light of dawn, a peaceful suburban home with an open garage, or an unassuming apartment tucked away behind the pine trees of a bustling city. When love is twisted by secret desires, wounded pride, or pathological jealousy, the results are catastrophic. To understand these tragedies is not to glorify the dark impulses that drove them, but to honor the victims whose bright promises were prematurely severed, to appreciate the painstaking labor of those who serve justice, and to illuminate the psychological traps that allow such darkness to take root. Chapter 1: Shadow Behind the Collar. The story of Latrice Curtis began with the kind of bright promise that lights up an entire community, raised in a warm, protective household filled with older brothers. Latrice was the cherished youngest child and the only girl, blessed with good looks, an infectious smile, and an easy, engaging personality. She possessed a rare ability to connect instantly with strangers. Yet beneath her charismatic exterior lay a fierce determination to succeed academically. Education was always her primary focus, and her tireless work ethic culminated in her acceptance to college in Raleigh, North Carolina. It was during her very first semester that Latrice met Darren Curtis, a dashing and ambitious accounting student. Darren, a former National Guard soldier, was respectful, mature, and instantly won over Latrice's protective family. Their romance possessed a textbook sweetness. Within a year of dating, Darren asked for her hand in marriage, and Latrice joyfully accepted. After taking their sacred vows, the newlyweds moved into a cozy apartment. Latrice transferred to the prestigious North Carolina Central University in nearby Durham to complete her degree in business administration. Though their schedules were demanding and left them with long hours apart, Latrice was ecstatic about their future. She was a young woman on the threshold of married life and a promising professional career, with her whole existence unfolding before her. However, less than 9 months after their wedding day, that future was shattered in the most horrific way imaginable. On the cold, winter morning of Wednesday, January 30, 2008, at approximately 7:30 in the morning commuters traveling west along Interstate 540 in Raleigh spotted something disturbing off the side of the road. Lying in the grass along a busy stretch of highway was the motionless body of a young woman. As emergency 911 calls flooded dispatchers, first responders rushed to the scene. Tragically, it was far too late. Initial assumptions leaned toward a tragic pedestrian accident, perhaps a stranded driver struck by a passing vehicle. But when law enforcement officers took a closer look, they quickly realized this was no ordinary traffic incident. The victim had been subjected to a brutal, passionate assault. She had been stabbed repeatedly about her face, throat, chest, and torso, suffering upwards of 40 wounds. Her carotid artery and jugular vein had been slashed open and her vocal cords were cut. Despite the savagery of the attack, her jewelry remained intact, ruling out a simple robbery. Furthermore, the defensive damage to her fingernails showed that she had fought valiantly for her life. While major crime investigators canvassed the area, a commuter named Darren Curtis drove past the scene at approximately 7:45 in the morning. Noticing the backed-up traffic and a body covered by a blue tarp, Darren felt a sudden knot of anxiety in his stomach. Just half a mile down the interstate, his curiosity turned to sheer panic when he spotted a white vehicle parked along the shoulder. It strongly resembled his wife's car. Frantic, Darren turned around and returned to the crime scene. Detectives confirmed his worst fears. The deceased woman was his 21-year-old wife, Latrice. An examination of Latrice's abandoned vehicle half a mile down the road revealed signs of a violent struggle inside. The center console was broken and blood was visible on the driver's side door. Crime scene investigators successfully recovered a foreign DNA sample from the steering wheel, suggesting that someone else had driven her car after the assault, along with genetic material beneath her fingernails. When detectives brought Darren in for routine questioning, his story seemed plausible. He explained that he had last spoken to Latrice around 10 o'clock the previous evening, when she called to say she was running late from school and planned to grab something to eat. Darren went to sleep around 11:30 in the evening. Waking up the next morning, he tried calling Latrice at 7 o'clock, but the call went straight to voicemail. Assuming she was asleep, he showered and left for work at 7:30, only to encounter the crime scene on his daily route along Interstate 540. Physical examination of Darren revealed no cuts, abrasions, or signs of struggle, and a consent search of his home and car yielded no evidence. He was released, though instructed not to leave town. The investigation took a dramatic turn upon receipt of Latrice's autopsy report. Medical examiners discovered a used condom inside her body. The absence of trauma to her genital area suggested the sexual contact was consensual rather than a physical assault, but it raised profound questions. Whose condom was it? And how was this encounter connected to her death? A subpoena of phone records revealed that while Darren's account matched his call log, Latrice had exchanged a flurry of frantic calls around midnight with a different number belonging to a man named Stephen Randolph. Stephen Randolph was one of the most eligible bachelors at North Carolina Central University, an attractive student athlete and basketball player, attempting to establish a career in the National Basketball Association. When investigators sought him out, Stephen voluntarily walked into the Wake County Sheriff's Office 2 days after the murder. He was accompanied by his housemate, a 43-year-old local pastor named Robert Lee Adams Reeves, known affectionately in Durham's evangelical community as the Bishop. Reeves was a charismatic public speaker who maintained a basement apartment in his home, renting it to Stephen for a modest $300 a month. In the interrogation room, Stephen initially claimed he and Latrice were merely classmates who occasionally studied together. But when presented with the phone records and autopsy findings, Stephen admitted to a secret, passionate affair. He confessed that Latrice had visited his apartment on the night of the murder, where they engaged in consensual sex. During the encounter, the condom became trapped inside her. Unable to remove it, Latrice left around 10 in the evening, intending to resolve the issue at home. Stephen stated that Latrice subsequently called him repeatedly around midnight in a state of high anxiety, terrified of the potential for an unwanted pregnancy. Stephen insisted he had not harmed her, claiming he spent the rest of the night driving around before visiting his girlfriend, Velma Newton. Velma confirmed Stephen's arrival around 10 o'clock that evening and his departure around 1 in the morning, though the coroner estimated Latrice's time of death between 1 and 2 in the morning, leaving Stephen's alibi less than airtight. Furthermore, Velma revealed that both she and Stephen had recently been subjected to a series of anonymous, threatening phone calls demanding they break up and that Stephen's car tires had recently been slashed. Investigators also learned that Stephen kept a collection of knives and swords at home. However, a search warrant executed on Stephen's car and home produced no murder, weapon, or physical evidence linking him to the crime scene. A critical breakthrough arrived when State Trooper Isaac Cooper contacted homicide detectives. Trooper Cooper reported that at approximately 1:30 on the morning of January 30, he had spotted a disabled vehicle with its hazard lights flashing on the eastbound shoulder of Interstate 540. On the opposite side of the highway, he noticed a white vehicle with hazard lights on, matching Latrice's car. Before he could investigate the white car, he was called away to an emergency, but dispatch had already run the license plate of the first disabled vehicle. It was registered to Pastor Robert Lee Adams Reeves. Why was the esteemed pastor's car parked on the side of a dark highway at 1:30 in the morning, directly across from the victim's vehicle? Detectives brought Pastor Reeves in for further questioning. Reeves insisted he had been at a church service that evening and had returned home to stay, suggesting Stephen might have borrowed his car. However, when investigators interviewed Reeves' sister, who attended the same church, she stated she had never seen him at the service. Detectives also noticed deep scratches and abrasions on Reeves' arms and hands, which he clumsily attributed to falling backward while moving a desk with Stephen. When questioned privately, Stephen denied any desk-moving incident had occurred. Stephen then revealed a deeply disturbing encounter. He disclosed that Pastor Reeves had displayed an uncomfortable obsession with his personal life. On one occasion, after Latrice left the house, Reeves entered Stephen's bedroom and asked inappropriate questions about his sexual experiences, suggesting Stephen work as a male escort and offering to waive his rent in exchange for sexual favors. Stephen rejected the advance. Shortly thereafter, the anonymous harassment, threatening calls, and slashed tires began. Subpoenaed phone records confirmed that the anonymous blocked calls to Stephen and Velma originated from Pastor Reeves' cell phone. The investigation unmasked a chilling double life behind the facade of a charismatic minister lay a man with a hidden history of predatory sexual behavior driven by a deep, pathological obsession with his young tenant, jealous of anyone who drew Stephen's affection. Reeves viewed Latrice as an intolerable rival. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when state crime lab analysts processed the DNA evidence. Genetic material recovered from inside Latrice's car provided a definitive match to Pastor Robert Reeves. The reconstruction of the crime revealed a terrifying narrative. On the night of January 29, 2008, Pastor Reeves followed Latrice as she left his house. He pursued her onto Interstate 540, signaled or forced her to pull over, and launched a ferocious attack born of unhinged jealousy and possessiveness. After inflicting 40 fatal wounds, he drove her vehicle half a mile down the road to conceal his actions, abandoning it before returning to his own car. On February 2, 2008, Pastor Robert Lee Adams Reeves was formally charged with first-degree murder. His trial commenced on September 29, 2009. Prosecutors presented a compelling case, detailing Reeves' unrequited obsession, the physical evidence, the matching DNA, and the state trooper's eyewitness placement of his vehicle at the crime scene. Although the defense attempted to argue that the DNA was transferred indirectly, or that Stephen held a greater motive, the physical and testimonial evidence proved overwhelming. On October 9, 2009, the jury returned a verdict of guilty. Robert Lee Adams Reeves was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. Chapter 2: The Badge and the Blind Spot. In the suburban community of Little Elm, Texas, Officer Wayne Irby was a familiar and respected figure, a 6-year veteran of the Little Elm Police Department. The 37-year-old officer was deeply committed to his calling. He was known as a dedicated lawman who took pride in walking his beat, meeting residents, and ensuring local safety. In 2003, that dedication led him to the front door of Denise Wall Miller. Denise, a 36-year-old mother of 2, had moved to Little Elm, seeking a fresh start following a painful divorce. She had built a successful career with a local beverage distributor, constructed a beautiful home for her children, Whitney and Walter, and established a comfortable life. When Officer Irby knocked on her door to warn her about an open garage door in a neighborhood experiencing recent thefts, a spark was ignited. Wayne was charmed by Denise's warmth, and Denise was drawn to the confident, protective officer. Their initial interaction quickly blossomed into a serious relationship. Wayne integrated seamlessly into Denise's family, forming a strong bond with her children. However, as their connection deepened, underlying tensions began to surface. Denise suffered from profound romantic insecurities and frequently accused Wayne of paying excessive attention to other women on his beat. Wayne, known for his outgoing and friendly demeanor, strongly denied any wrongdoing. The cycle of accusation and denial strained their bond. In December 2003, an argument erupted at Wayne's rental residence. When Denise arrived unannounced and spotted another woman's purse inside, a physical altercation ensued, resulting in minor injuries to both parties and visible scratches on Wayne's face. Denise filed a domestic violence report only to recant it the following day, claiming she had acted out of extreme anger. Despite the volatility, the couple repeatedly attempted to reconcile, eventually purchasing a home together in 2004, yet cohabitation failed to resolve their trust issues. By late 2004, Wayne concluded that the relationship was unhealthy and decided to move back into his rental property across town. On the morning of Friday, December 10th, 2004, the routine at the Little Elm Police Department was broken by an unusual absence. Officer Wayne Irby failed to appear for his scheduled 6 o'clock morning briefing. Wayne was notoriously punctual, making his absence an immediate cause for concern among his colleagues. Repeated phone calls went directly to voicemail. By noon, Police Chief Waylon Rhodes dispatched officers to perform a welfare check at the home Wayne shared with Denise. The house was dark, locked, and no vehicles were present. When investigators spoke with Denise's teenage children, they learned that their mother had not returned home the previous night. Her daughter, Whitney, recalled receiving a brief, atypical phone call from Denise around midnight, during which her mother expressed love and instructed the children to prepare themselves for school the next morning. Growing increasingly alarmed, Wayne's partner, Officer Jerry Walker, alongside Officer James Wynn, obtained a key to Wayne's rental home from the landlord. Stepping inside, the officers found Wayne's personal fanny pack and cell phone sitting untouched on the kitchen island. Proceeding cautiously down the hallway, Officer Wynn turned a corner and stopped abruptly, warning Walker not to advance. Further, lying face down on the hallway floor was Officer Wayne Irby. He had suffered a single, fatal gunshot wound to the exact center of the back of his head. There were no physical signs of a struggle or forced entry, suggesting Wayne had been caught entirely off guard by someone he knew and trusted. A search of the premises revealed that Wayne's service weapon was missing from its holster. Denise Miller was nowhere to be found, triggering a statewide all-points bulletin for her apprehension. Investigators searching the couple's primary residence discovered two disturbing handwritten notes left by Denise. The first, located in the master bedroom, expressed deep emotional despair and implicit suicidal thoughts. The second note, left on a kitchen counter, contained a direct and tragic admission. "I'm sorry, I took both of our lives. Please contact our moms." At 4 o'clock on the morning of Saturday, December 11th, 2000, management at a hotel in Gainesville, Texas, approximately 50 miles from Little Elm, received a distressed phone call from a guest room. Unable to open the deadbolt door, maintenance personnel broke entry and discovered Denise Miller lying crumpled on the floor in a daze, suffering from a gunshot wound to her head just above her eye. A .25 caliber handgun lay beside her. Emergency medical services rushed Denise to a trauma center, where she survived, despite critical neurological injury. Inside the hotel room, investigators recovered empty alcohol containers, over-the-counter sleep aids, and Wayne's missing .40 caliber service pistol. The service weapon had jammed because a cartridge had been loaded backward into the magazine. When the weapon failed to cycle, Denise had turned to her stepfather's .25 caliber pistol to carry out her suicide attempt. A third handwritten note was recovered from the hotel room. In this longer text, Denise reiterated her despair but included a crucial new claim. She asserted that she had accidentally shot Wayne and had fled in sheer panic. Texas Ranger Tracy Murphy interviewed Denise at her hospital bedside once. Doctors deemed her stable. Due to the severe head trauma Denise displayed significant cognitive impairment and motor deficits. When questioned about the events in Little Elm, she claimed to have no memory of shooting Wayne or attempting her own life, maintaining a state of utter confusion when informed that Wayne had died. Following 18 months of intensive medical rehabilitation and physical therapy, Denise was left using a wheelchair, blind in one eye and suffering from partial paralysis. Medical evaluations determined that while her neurological damage had caused genuine memory gaps, she was legally competent to stand trial. Her trial opened on July 10, 2006 at the Denton County Courthouse. Prosecutors presented a detailed timeline establishing that on the evening of December 9, 2004, Wayne informed Denise that he was terminating their relationship permanently, driven by intense fear of abandonment and possessiveness. Denise retrieved her stepfather's .25 caliber pistol and drove to Wayne's rental home. When Wayne turned his back, she executed him at point-blank range. Forensic evidence played a central role in disproving the defense's argument of an accidental discharge. Forensic testing on the .25 caliber pistol demonstrated that the trigger required 4.5 to 5 pounds of deliberate pressure to fire, eliminating the possibility of a light, accidental touch. Furthermore, the trajectory of the bullet entering the center back of the skull, combined with Denise's deliberate actions, retrieving the weapon, failing to render aid or call emergency services, writing confession notes, and fleeing the scene, demonstrated clear intent. The defense emphasized Denise's fraudulent